Welcome back, sci-fi fans, to the Science Fictionary podcast. It's a science fictionary roundtable, and we're going to discuss the premiere of The Rings of Power. We had a couple of people had to kind of drop last minute, but I think they will probably come on with us in a week or two. But I intentionally went looking for. I've got DB here because I know that he's like me and he knows a lot about it and was kind of looking for the same things I was in this series. But I'm also really, really curious what people who aren't as deep into the lore are thinking about the series as just purely looking at it as a fantasy series standing completely on its own, because I do find that if I look at it like that, it's a beautiful show.
Oh yeah.
And there are some areas where they have improved on even what Peter Jackson did. And so I specifically want to talk with you about that, Ro, because some of the compositing with the digital and practical is really impressive.
It's spot on.
Yeah.
But joining me tonight, I've got Ro from the Scarif podcast.
What's up, everybody?
And DB from the let's see, what podcast are you on?
ATSW.
That's right. There we go. I blanked. My brain is still recovering from 5 days of Dragon Con, so
yeah,
I'm still catching up on sleep. I honestly don't know how some of the people that do Dragon Con, like without kids, like that are there, because if you haven't done Dragon Con, and it's different than other cons in that it never stops for like 5.5 days. It's just a party.
right.
Mm-hmm.
There are literally, there are after parties that don't start till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Right.
Wow.
During the weekend. And so you can literally do something 24 hours a day for 5 days if you really were insane. But what
and single.
Right. But what happens is most people like party until they pass out, and then they don't show back up at the con till like 2 or 3 the next afternoon.
Yeah, sure. I can see that. Yeah.
But it's like just doing, we stay there like the only night we do one of the big cosplay events, which runs until about midnight on Sunday night. And even then, like, it's hard to get going the next morning, but we're usually out of there by like 8 o'clock with the kids, because Dragon Con after dark is a little different than Dragon Con during the day. So we don't stick around much during the night with the kids. So just off the bat, Dragon Buddy, what did you think about this show?
Off the top, it was beautiful. It is stunning. Like you get that production value that they're putting into this show. So it was a great jump back into Middle Earth. As far as topical, I mean, there's plenty of, we can go over flaws with the show and how they're doing it or how they're molding their show around it. But honestly, I was telling Kelly after we watched it the second time, and I said, you know what? If you look at the Peter Jackson movies and you're coming off of that and you're jumping into this show, it's a great start to get back into Middle Earth. So far. And it really puts you back in there and it has you hooked.
No, I mean, it feels like Middle Earth, and there are I'm really liking a lot of the characters. There are some like things from the lore that's like, how are they going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there are some things that I'm still very much questioning how they do them, because it's the problem of the compressed timeline.
Right. It's thousands and thousands of years that we're talking where there's inconsistencies of. So
right. And as we go, I'll get into a couple of the big ones that I'm curious about. But Ro, just as a fan of science fiction, fantasy, just watching it and filmmaking in general, what are your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, so going in, as you stated, I am not familiar at all with the lore of Lord of the Rings. I remember seeing the films; they were fantastic, but it's something that didn't stick in my brain for one reason or another. I'm more into like the technological sci-fi and fantasy than I am the natural elves and wizards sort of thing. So, I watched it and, it was cool and I loved it, but nothing really retained. I can't really tell you who the characters are, what their names are, et cetera, et cetera, for both Lord of the Rings and this show. I mean, obviously this show, I'm watching it, currently, and it's newer, but that being said, I'm really enjoying this show, and I know there was mention in the chat about the other fantasy-based show, which is on HBO, House of the Dragon. I don't have HBO, so I haven't seen that at all. So I can't really make a fair comparison between the two. But if you're asking me specifically just for Rings of Power, I'm enjoying it a lot. I am enjoying the actors. I think they're really good. The special effects I think are really good. There's some points where you can kind of see like, oh, they're just standing in front of a whatever. But for the most part, there are some shots in there that the first thing that I said, because as you can tell from my background, I'm more of a Star Wars aficionado. I was thinking, wow, I really wish that the some of the Star Wars shows that we've gotten up to this point had given us a lot more of these sweeping wide shots, these camera moves, more so than just an establishing shot. There are some scenes where, the camera is wide and it goes in, the actors start to do their thing and the camera kind of swoops around this way. So that type of production value I'm really into because it gives you more of an opportunity to take a look at the environment, which to me looks like, it's obviously a location. Most of the time anyways, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it overall. I think it's a really great looking show.
No, I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, there are little things here and there that I'm not upset about in this show. Like the only thing, and I knew beforehand that this was going to bug me, and DB's aware of this, Ro, you're not, that Durin, we have Durin the third and Durin the fourth alive at the same time.
Right.
Where Durin is almost a title. It's when the dwarves, Durin, the original king of the dwarves, the original ruler, and they believe that every so often he's reincarnated. And when they believe that that's true, that person is named Durin.
Like so Doctor Who?
Yeah. But to have two Durins alive at the same time,
it kills that whole storyline.
It does kill that storyline. Now, that's from the Silmarillion, and I don't know if they even they only have access to the appendices. So they're now obviously they did go to the they said early on that they are able to go to the estate and ask to pull things from the Silmarillion.
Right. And they do have access to the essays and a lot of the letters that were written,
right,
which you can pull a lot of lore from them. And you can also interpret a lot of what was already written from Tolkien's letters, to where he tweaked things a little here and there, to where the big build off Meteor Man in this show is being one of them, that you could tweak a timeline and say you're not really breaking lore doing it. It's a better play on words than I think Star Wars has tried to do.
Right.
But
well, and the truth is that Tolkien was constantly, very much like George Lucas does, was always tweaking his ideas from the moment he wrote The Hobbit until his death, was tweaking these ideas. And so you really even have to take it and look at the Silmarillion and go, well, that's just a compilation of his notes. But he still wrote other things that disagreed with that all along the way.
Right.
And those notes weren't compiled by him. So it's like, do you really, I would almost say that the appendices are more canonical than the Silmarillion.
Right.
Since he wrote the appendices. And now there are other letters, that's the big gripe, is that the Istari don't show up until the second age, right? I mean, until the third age, right?
Third age, yeah.
But have you read The Peoples of Middle Earth?
Yeah.
Because they show up in the Second Age.
Yeah.
Early, they show up
Early.
about the same time the rings are being created.
Mm-hmm. And even Gandalf, where he tweaked in I forget what letter it was, where he basically said that there were adventures that were yet unknown, basically, to where could he have showed up at the first stage and fought with Morgoth, that big bad in the first stage, and he was probably there for the beginning of the fight, what we're building to now in the Rings of Power with Sauron, coming around.
But it's one of those things that that's been the big sticking point for a lot of people. But there is this whole section in the Peoples of Middle Earth that talks about them coming in the Second Age and all the things that they accomplished. And then he even talks about in interviews later about all the things that he thinks, because by his later years he's talking about Middle Earth like it's real.
Yeah.
And he's talking about things like, basically, well, what did the Blue Wizards do? And then he says, well, I assumed that they did, all of these things, but, that ultimately they failed. And, but there are a lot of indications that I have no problem with them bringing the wizards in the Second Age, because that's directly out of his mouth.
Even just as simple as how many names that Gandalf had. He was known in the South. He was known in the North. He was known by the orcs. He was known by, and he had all these different names, on top of what he was, the mayor, and being an archangel, basically coming down.
Yeah, and that's the thing. His Maiar name is Olorin. So he doesn't even have to take the name Gandalf in this series.
Nope.
Now, I do want to address this right here specifically, because while there have been some political statements made by some of the actors, this is absolutely 180 degrees contrary to everything the showrunners have said about respecting Tolkien's lore.
They've done some double talk on a lot of different things when it came to lore, but they basically said they were trying to do what Peter Jackson said and leaving politics out of it and creating a world. But the actors have taken off and run with it with their own, whether you want to call it an agenda or just as far as making statements.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, all these actors have their platforms, and I don't think you can put all that much stock in what an actor says about a series. They only know little pieces, and you also don't know what is factual and what headspace they had to get into to play the character can be two totally unrelated things.
Right.
It's like the actress that's playing Bronwyn she's from Iran. She's from a place where women really are, treated a lot of times less than human in some ways.
Absolutely.
And the fact that she's drawing from that to play her character doesn't mean that she's inputting modern politics into the character. She's just telling you the headspace that she got in order to portray the character.
Right.
Ro, what characters are you liking so far? Or do you have any questions?
Yeah, hold on. I got quite a few here. No, but I think who's the protagonist, the blonde?
That is Galadriel. That was
Okay.
Kate Blanchett. You've seen the original, the movies, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. But again, I don't remember a lot of it. But Kate Blanchett.
Right. That was Kate Blanchett's character.
Okay. I like her. I like the elf, that the warrior elf guy. What's his name? Don't make me say it. The black character.
Arendir.
Yeah. He's a great actor.
Yeah,
I'm liking his little storyline there.
Yeah, now he's a fully created for this series character.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing a great job. I know the story kind of splits off into little subplots and things like that. And I think I'm enjoying everything. like I said, the acting is fine. It's good on many levels, and the actors are engaging in their roles. So yeah, absolutely. I'm enjoying, this is hard for me to say, but I'm enjoying some of the humor as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, Galadriel has been a really interesting one. Of course, that's probably, as you see over here in the comment section, has been a divisive character. Now,
Yeah.
Joker Voice just mentioned Don Lemon. I worked with him here in Chicago. It's funny.
But Galadriel was always referred to by Tolkien as a warrior. She was referred to during the time of the Lord of the Rings. Tolkien called her the mightiest elf left in Middle Earth.
Right.
And she's arrogant, and she always is arrogant. And in fact, that might be something that doesn't fully come through in the Lord of the Rings. But she's an arrogant character.
A little bit when she has that conversation with Frodo about the ring, to where she kind of lets that dark side come through about how powerful I am, and I could take that from you. And, I think it comes out a little bit there, but we're going way back before, where she's just a powerful elf sitting in,
Right. So what do y'all think about the way they've shown her? Like, let's talk about the opening scenes where she fights the cave troll. Because I'm seeing a lot of the
battle. I'm liking the battle mage that she kind of, really is. That she's tough. She's driven. Her brother is dead. Which I will say in the beginning was a little tweak, where we've never known death, but yet her brother says, "I'm not always going to be here," kind of thing was a little bit of a tweak that annoyed me. But at the same time, she picks up this, her brother's fight, and we're creeping into the time where everybody thought things were fine. So, and she knows it's not. And she seems to be the only one. The complacency that's going to, lead to what Middle Earth becomes.
Yeah. So Gil-galad in this, which is the High King row, the one that's in all gold. So, and he does say, because I was a little, Gil-galad is one of the ones that was early on in the lore aware of the danger, of the darkness that's still there in Middle Earth. And I was worried they were going to just exclude that altogether. And, but they didn't. Like, after she leaves, he's talking to Elrond. He's like, look, he said, yeah, there's still an evil here. But, almost that he thinks that Galadriel, just by being there and being so insistent on finding it, is going to create more trouble than she stops.
Right.
Is part of why he sends her away. But, I'm seeing a lot of this stuff, and, the truth is that Galadriel is, if you want to go into the lore here, she's the grandchild of Finwë, one of the original elves, one of the elves created by God himself.
Right.
No parents. He's created by God himself. Like, we're in these elves, as they go to Middle Earth, they become less powerful over time. But with Galadriel, you're talking about an elf that was born in Valinor, has seen the two trees. You're talking about one of the most powerful. I mean, even the Maiar and the Valar, to some extent, are afraid of the elves.
Yeah.
And the Valar, the Maiar are basically, Maiar, you've got the wizards. They're like lesser gods or archangels, but the wizards are Maiar. The eagles, the great eagles, may be Maiar. We're not really ever told for sure. The Balrogs are definitely Maiar, and Sauron is Maiar. So we're talking about a more angelic class of people, and even they fear the elves to some extent. And I just don't have any problem with Galadriel walking in a room and being the most powerful person in the room.
No, that's fine. And I think there was some handoffs where, she's saving the guy, and then the next thing you know, the guy's saving her. So I didn't feel like there was any real statement of saying, that,
like I'm the strongest.
Yeah, the powerful woman, and we're better than all the men kind of push you can see in some things. I didn't really get that vibe at all. I thought it was very back and forth and equal when it came to, especially on the raft, where after the worm is gone.
And I did see a lot of criticism over the special effects of that snow beast. A lot of comparisons to something in the Lord of the Rings movies where I think somebody is riding the tail of some dragon and it looks kind of iffy. And but I think it looked fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to compare Trolls, I mean, now by the Return of the King, by the time they released it, the Trolls looked better. So the Trolls in the last movie do look better than the ones. Specifically, if you look at the first time we fight a troll in Moria,
right?
Like that's some of the shoddiest CGI work in all of Peter Jackson's trilogy.
Yeah,
it's one of the few places that just doesn't really hold up. And I think that this is a huge step forward. And I know a lot of people didn't like the look of the snow troll, but I mean, I sat in a panel a few days ago and listened to the guy to John Howe talk about how they created all the look of Middle Earth for this series. And basically he said, you can't start at Lord of the Rings and then reverse engineer it. He said, we're thousands of years earlier. The elves are much more mighty at this point. Men are much lesser, except for the Numenoreans. Like we had to redo the whole look. And so we didn't go to Lord of the Rings and say, how do we make this look like Lord of the Rings? We went back to the text and rebuilt from there, from Tolkien's descriptions. And listening to him talk was absolutely amazing, but just as equally amazing, it was John Howe who was kind of the concept artist here. And wrote, like I told you the other day, that would be kind of like getting to sit and listen to Ralph McQuarrie talk about how he created the look for Star Wars. I mean, it's that big of a deal. And then the linguist that worked on this show was there, and listening to her talk was almost more interesting than listening to him talk about how she helped shape the language or work with all these actors on pronouncing, because there's a whole Appendix E, I believe, is basically nothing but how to pronounce everything.
Oh yeah.
I should really look into that, because one of the biggest things I have an issue with is remembering their names, pronouncing their names, because they all sound like pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, they sound like pharmaceuticals, and if you're getting into the lore, like, and you go through their like ancestors' names, like it's like they all sound the same. After a while, they all start to sound the same, and it's like, how do you tell this apart? But the language was largely based on Welsh, which actually two of the lead actors are actually Welsh, and took picked it up very quickly, including the Morfydd Clark, who plays Galadriel, is Welsh. But as far as what they're doing, I think the look of it's great. I don't have any serious problems with any characters yet. I really liked Durian. And I like what they're doing with Durian and Elrond. I know that there's
I like the humor coming from the dwarf end of it. It makes sense in the lore of it to have that jovial kind of feel.
Yeah, because I mean, elves are more serious most of the time, and they view the world differently. But dwarves are much more jovial and joking and just more lighthearted in general than the elves. And I like that they did that, but also kept them serious enough to not be. Peter Jackson largely used the dwarves as comic relief.
Oh yeah.
When they went into that the dwarf land, again, getting back to these wide shots and the you mentioned the compositing earlier on. That's some stunning work. I loved those wide shots. That world building aspect of some of those shots are really fantastic. You know, when I watch fantasy movies, sci-fi movies, I kind of like, you know, I've said this before. I watch it with like many eyes. First as a fan, and I enjoy it, soak it in, but then I go back and kind of like pick it apart and see, you know, I try to figure out like how they shot things and things like that, just for my own personal curiosity.
Right.
But it's really good, looking good.
Yeah. It's a really cool blend. It's the same thing Peter Jackson did. It's a really great blend of practical and CGI. They built a lot of practical stuff. In fact, they told us that that was the biggest expense.
Oh, I bet.
In this show, and it's why season 1 is going to cost more than the other seasons, because they had to build everything.
Said,
but they basically said, but that cost will be defrayed across the other 4 seasons.
Yeah.
As a fan of Tolkien, to see Khazad-dûm at its heyday, and then bring you into it to where the dwarves are explaining how they sing to the rock, and elves kind of always looked out and down upon the world, and dwarves have always looked inside the world and what's inside everything, including what's inside a stone. And I thought that whole sequence was great to see and to jump into. I thought they did the dwarves well.
Yeah. And one of the characters that I wasn't sure how I was going to take was Disa, as Durin the Fourth's wife.
Right.
And honestly, because she's been, as far as actors that have just said things that have stirred the pot so badly, she was probably the foremost.
To the top.
Which one was that?
Disa. She plays Durin's wife when
the dwarf's wife.
Yeah, the dwarf's wife.
Oh, okay.
But honestly, like, I really liked her character.
Yeah.
She's a lot of fun, and I wasn't sure how I was going to take it, and I was thrilled to see that the character's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I love this thing where I think my favorite thing about that they've done so far, as far as kind of delving into who elves are and who everybody else is this conversation between Durin and Elrond. Because dwarves are long lived, but like 200 to 300 years.
Right.
They live longer than men, but they're still finite. Where elves are ageless beings, they're immortal. They just live forever. They don't change in appearance. And so, the fact that Elrond went away for 20 years and missed all of these important moments in Durin's life is really upsetting to Durin. And Elrond's just kind of like, has it really only been 20 years?
Yeah,
like,
only 20.
Right, yeah.
And so I love it, because that's always kind of one of the big things with kind of why the elves tend to overlook other races in Middle-earth, is because their time is fleeting. Like, you don't build a relationship with someone who's just almost gone in the blink of an eye to you. Right. Especially since a lot of these elves, the prominent elves that we have around at this point, are already thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I didn't know about the lifespan of these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're going to run into Numenor at some point, which they were like the blessed men, where they were given basically twice a lifetime, like 200 years. And then you'll run into the men of Middle Earth, which are basically
they're us.
They're us. We have a regular lifespan.
So the Numenoreans, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, is one of the last of the Numenoreans.
Right.
So we see when we talk about the Numenoreans, we're going to see the Numenoreans. I suspect this episode that's dropped. Well, I know we are, because they were about to pick Galadriel up
Right.
at the end of the last episode. So we're probably seeing Numenor when the show drops tonight.
Yeah.
And basically, the Numenoreans are the people that fought alongside the elves against Morgoth, which was the first great evil that they talk about. Sauron is a student of Morgoth. Morgoth is actually one of the Valar. He's much more powerful than,
he's OG.
Yeah. So he's one of the original creations of Iluvatar, the god of Middle Earth, or the god of the universe. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it. What did you think about what did y'all think about the intro? Because they went for an intro sort of reflective of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, where we kind of get an opening story to kind of set the stage.
Did they do an opening in the second episode? I don't remember.
No, just for the first,
Okay.
first one. Just like the first movie, really sets. Basically, Peter Jackson's first movie basically tells the story of abbreviated story of the Second Age, which is what we're doing now.
Right. I think it hit on the important parts that they're going to draw from, as far as giving you a quick history of the big bad Morgoth, which would be almost like Lucifer. He's one of the original creations that turned and wanted power. So a quick run through him. You don't really need to know much. As far as lore goes, he was more of a coward in the end. And that's why, he disappeared. They conquered him, and his number one, Sauron, takes over. But he hides away to build a massive army. And that's what's, going on right now. And Galadriel saying, I know he's somewhere building a massive army. And the rest of the elves are saying it's been 200-300 years roughly of peace. We haven't seen them, maybe some orcs here or there, but you're crazy. There's nothing going on. And that's where we're building that complacency, which is good if you're bringing in Numenor, but they're compressing everything together, which I'll say Meteor Man. He's interesting. When he drops is when Galadriel decides that she's going to turn around and come back. The type of magic he seems to use isn't quite the bright white magic you would think. When he does his little spell with the fireflies and sending them up into the sky to show the stars, these fireflies die at the end. So the loss of life is definitely a blacker magic.
And it's interesting because but the other side of that is that he kills the fireflies, but he almost seems like he's remorseful that he killed them.
Right.
And so maybe he's good, but he doesn't know how to harness, to balance his power in this realm.
Right.
But he's definitely a Maiar.
And for lore-wise, Sauron, at this point in his existence, he can actually change his shape. He can become whatever he wants to become. He wants to look like a man. He wants to look like an elf. He could become anything he wants. So knowing that going into the show, there's hints here or there to be, are we seeing Sauron yet? Or, is he those of us that have read it are looking for it. And there are cues here and there, and there are some things that throw you off, that he uses, like even with Meteor Man using dark magic, but then turning around and, the comic relief that he comes with the cart rolling down the hill. I don't see Sauron doing that.
Are they setting him up to be Gandalf, possibly?
That's possibly.
Homeless Kal-El?
There were 5 wizards?
There are 5 wizards, yeah.
We knew about Saruman, Gandalf, and Radagast from the Lord of the Rings. There was 2 other blue wizards, which their names just escape me at the moment.
Palantir and I'm blanking on the other, but
they ended up turning in the end. really didn't do much. Like they were sent to try to help, and eventually, succumbed to the darkness.
Yeah. So the Tolkien's last real indication was that the Blue Wizards, this could be one of the Blue Wizards, or they could be compressing the Blue Wizards into one character here.
Right. Or it could be Gandalf, and they're tweaking from these essays and letters that Tolkien had written that
right.
Maybe he did show up in the Second Age, but he's not Gandalf. We never know how these angels come to Middle Earth. They don't say, they come out of the sky like an angel. They don't say. All they say really in the books is that they show up. Their memory's gone. A lot of their superpowers for being these, super beings are gone, or forgotten.
Right.
So,
yeah,
that's
so a
like
lot of
his
the
whole thing showing up, not knowing, not being able to speak or communicate normally, and his confusion. It's setting up to where this could be Gandalf.
Yeah. I think there's a good chance it's Gandalf. It's either Gandalf or one of the Blue Wizards. I'm convinced at this point. But so basically, you have Saruman who just falls directly into service to Sauron. Radagast, who becomes much more interested in the world and nature than doing the job he was sent to do. And the Blue Wizards, who basically just disappear into the east. And Tolkien's last indication was that they probably started cults of dark magic and other things there. So that Gandalf was really the only one that did the job he was sent to do. But they also talk about them so they come as old men. They're sent. I mean, these are powerful beings, but they're sent in the physical body of old men in a way to humble them.
Right.
Just like Jonathan Winters in Mork and Mindy when he played their son.
Right.
I have to relate it somehow, guys. I gotta make a connection here.
Yep.
So right now, like, is there anything y'all don't like, or that you're not sure about yet?
Mainly me would be just the compression of time that we seem to be doing. We're taking from first age, second age, possibly third age, or tweaking some lore in order to avoid the third age. Because there are a lot of things that are going on that are almost ready for where the Lord of the Rings is going to pick up, within 1,000 or so years. And then there's stuff going on that's like, 10,000 years or 5 to 10,000 years before it. So
like Numenor's still here, and
granted, you'd have like a show that would have 5,000 seasons in order to.
Yeah, there's no way to do it all. So I understand why
it's obvious that's it's the best way to go.
It's one of those things that kind of makes me go, like, I think it's the only way to actually do a second age story is to say, we're going to give you 5 seasons to figure out how to squeeze it all in. Now there are concerning things as far as some of the particularly revolving around a missing character here. Where is Celeborn?
Right.
So Celeborn is Galadriel's husband. They have a child relatively early in the second age.
Right. And they're always together. Like, they're described as always being together.
Right. Now, it's possible that they haven't met yet, but the weird thing there is going to be they have a daughter, Celebrian. Celebrian is the future wife of Elrond.
Right.
So, like, is this character not born yet? Now, she is younger. Elrond is much older, but I mean, we're talking an 8,000, a many thousands of year old character that's 2,000 years older than this other one. Like,
right.
But
talk about cradle robbing.
Right. But see, that's one of the things. Like, how do you create this character now? Like, either she's already married, and this in Celeborn and Celebrian are in her dominion, which she had a kingdom of her own at this point in the books that we don't hear anything about here. So she may or may not. But the fact that she was leaving Middle Earth to go to Valinor without taking anyone with her or saying goodbye to anyone tells me that there isn't anybody else. And she
Right.
has no kingdom of her own. So I don't mind that she doesn't have the kingdom. I'm just really concerned. It's like, it seems like these other characters should be around at this point.
Right. At least to mention
Right.
that they're there.
How many episodes is this, or each season, or how many episodes are we getting for this first season?
So this one is 8. And
Okay.
and they kind of went back and forth. I think initially we thought it was going to be 10.
Right.
Because I think it was originally pitched as 10, or I'm sorry, 5 10-episode seasons. So it'd be 50 hours.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd be 50 hours of content. And now I don't really know unless the last 2 episodes are actually longer, which is possible. They really haven't told us yet. But it is 8. So I am curious to see if there is going to be some time jumping from season to season. And obviously the main reason that they're trying to avoid a lot of that is so that they don't have to replace the human characters every season.
Right.
Although I do think that would be somewhat interesting to see that passage of time where the elves remain and the men move on, because that's kind of that's a big part of Middle Earth, is
that would be interesting.
That the men pass and that the elves remain, and it really affects the way the two races view each other.
Right. Because we're going to see that big city of men, Numenor, and within the space of between now and Lord of the Rings, they basically say, screw you, God. We're going to do what we want. You said don't go west. We're going to go west.
Well, they actually try to go to war with the Valar, with the gods.
So where God is just like, okay, Atlantis, it's this star-shaped island that is just going to disappear. And what we're left with is just a broken bloodline, which is Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, and men that are normal, like us.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see Numenor destroyed this season.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think based on the characters that are there, I think we're already kind of in the end game for Numenor.
Well, we already have Isildur. And so, yeah, I mean, that's that crunch, like, as far as time frames go.
Right. So I think we almost have to see Numenor destroyed, because we're going to, over the next coming seasons, see the other kingdoms like Gondor established.
Right.
So I think I think either this season or maybe next we'll see the fall of Numenor.
Right. Cool.
So we've got 2 characters that we don't know who they are. We already talked about the stranger, who he could be Sauron. Now, here's my theory on Sauron, based on what Celebrimbor he's already working on this project. He's got to create this forge to create these things. I don't think we've met, because we have all these theories about, I'm blanking on his name, the guy on the boat with Galadriel.
Halbrand.
Yeah. So we've got Halbrand and the stranger, which there are tons of rumors about both of them being Sauron. But the problem is I think that Sauron is already more embedded, and I think Celebrimbor has already met.
He was in elf form. That's how
Anatar.
That's what we're going to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Anatar which is this persona of, this, what is it, Anatar of the gifts?
The gifts, yeah.
So that Anatar comes and teaches Celebrimbor how to forge the rings. And I think that's already in motion. So I think when we meet him, he's going to be Anatar.
Yeah.
I don't think he's one of these other characters. Now, could these other characters still wind up being villains? Absolutely.
Yeah. We've got 5 seasons, and they can. I think there's going to be a lot of antagonists that are just going to be here or there until the final. Where we see Sauron in the end of the Second Age.
Yeah, but I'm convinced at this point, one way or another, that the stranger is one of the wizards.
Yeah,
and I'm sort of on the train that believes that Halbrand might actually be the Witch King.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
oh wow.
Because the people in the Southlands are talking about their king has, their king coming back, and
Yeah.
he's
And
just walked away, and he's not good. Like Galadriel kind of looks at him and he asks her something. He says, "I'm wondering what kind of man just leaves their companions to die."
there's a monster coming. What's the first thing I'm doing? I'm unhooking from these people and going the other way because there's a bunch of them and there's only one of me.
Right.
But at the same time, Galadriel decided I'm jumping ship too and running. So,
yeah. So I think I kind of wonder if he could be the Witch King, but I'm also really curious. What did y'all think about Bronwyn and her son, whose name I'm totally going to draw a blank on?
yeah, that one I'm off on.
Because these are stories that Tolkien didn't write about. These are Southlanders. He told us about them. These are people so this is the people in the small village, the little country village.
Right.
He talked about mostly what they were. They were people that fought on the side of evil during the First Great War.
Right.
And so that's why the elves are there to watch over them, to make sure that they're not, building an army to march against the elves again.
I'm curious where that storyline goes because Theo and Bronwyn are not. They're made for the show, but the sword hilt, the fact that it's affecting Theo, I think that's a neat storyline to go off of. Where they're gonna go with it, I'm intrigued. I don't see where they're going with it yet.
I don't either. I am curious if Halbrand is Theo's father.
Okay.
And I'm really wondering if one of the two of them winds up being the Witch King.
That would make sense then if he was the father. So yeah, I never thought of that. Now you got my head going.
What did you think about those? Because these are characters that are new to all of us, right? The Southlanders. We've really never had very many people from this part of the world by name. We just kind of know of their existence and what they did in the past.
This is the young kid that was hiding in the house because there were some sort of
the orcs were
yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm enjoying all the little offshoots of the story to see where it comes up. I'm really liking the relationship between the elf and this woman. It started tender, like right off the bat, and when the son is like, "What is he doing here?" You can tell that there's some tension there. But yeah, I want to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm really curious. And of course, it's one of the things, as someone that's deep into the lore, it's one of the things that's very interesting to me because, and I was very concerned about it, but the fact that they actually addressed previous unions of elves and men in the show.
It never goes well. If you read The Lord of the Rings, it doesn't end like Peter Jackson ends it. It still ends in misery.
Yeah.
You still have somebody who's going to die and somebody's going to outlive the other, and they'll have duties to take care of as far as being kings. And it's never a happy ending when it comes to the mixing of the races, which I think addressing it again is another thing where it's. I don't know if you're reading too much into Tolkien to say that it's presents races in general. I think that's more the fantasy side of it. The elves and men, I mean, you have elves that live thousands of years and you have men that most live a few hundred years. It's not going to work,
Right. But that's the other thing. Like, it's a big deal. It's every time that there's a union of elves and men, it's world changing. It's a really, really big deal. And actually, that's why Elrond, one of the things that makes Elrond such an interesting character is that he is actually the product of the previous two unions of elves and men, and then
Right.
his daughter will be the third.
Yeah.
But so basically, Elrond's brother is the first king of Numenor, right?
Yes. Yes.
So basically, because they were born to an elf and a human, they basically have to choose whether to be human or elf.
Yeah.
And his brother chooses to be mortal and becomes a king of men. And
Mhm.
Elrond chooses to be an elf and chooses immortality and will eventually be a king of the elves. So there's a lot. I mean, Tolkien's lore is just so deep, and there's so much to it. It's
No
very
one's
complex.
no one's done world building as much as he has, and tweaked it so much to where you're literally starting with the Big Bang, and the creation of everything. That's
Right.
how deep it goes. So, and then it goes. I really, the part where Theo finds this blade, so it's just under a floorboard kind of deal. It's very reminiscent of the One Ring, falling into the hands of Smeagol.
Did he
And
find it? Or did he know it was there, or did he hide
Yeah,
it and just grabbed it? To me, it seemed like he already knew it was there.
that's
Yeah.
what
Well,
I
he was talking about the fact he found it. He stepped on the loose board, and
yeah,
found it. And it seems like it's more than just the sword. Like it's stuff that someone has hidden away since the war
right.
in like a hidden room in that barn.
It's a dark blade. That'll
Mhm.
eventually be what's used by like the ring wraiths and everything from the Peter Jackson movies. So it's very kind of happenstance where a kid's just like, I found it. Either that blade found that kid, or
Right.
there's something a little deeper going on there.
Yeah. So, what did y'all think about the Harfoots, which are the hobbits of this
Right.
age?
I don't see the uproar that people have with it. I mean, the
There
showrunners
was
were
uproar.
there was uproar because hobbits don't belong in the Second Age. We don't read. It was said that they didn't do anything, and the showrunners were dicks and turned around and said, "Well, they didn't say anything about Harfoots," which
It's just one of the original lines of
it's
hobbits.
just the same thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, maybe they didn't do something of quite note of Frodo going to a
Mhm.
They
volcano
didn't
to
do
throw a thing.
something right. They didn't do maybe didn't do anything world changing.
Right.
But particularly if this is Gandalf, like this will explain why Gandalf has such an affinity for the hobbits
Mm,
throughout the whole time that he's in
Right.
Middle Earth.
right. That makes sense.
Because that's the thing is the other wizards see them as inconsequential,
Mhm.
Right.
where he always they're Gandalf's favorite people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Eventually, I really think one of them is going to call him Stormcrow, and then it's all over. We know that is early Gandalf.
Right. I didn't mind them at all. As long as they don't aren't involved in some big quest or going to war or anything like that. But to say that the hobbits weren't there, because a lot of people are just upset that there's hobbits
Mhm.
Right.
in general.
Yeah, in general.
But
Okay.
the thing is, well, these aren't hobbits. They don't live in holes in the ground and this and that. But if you just read The Hobbit and read the first chapter called Concerning Hobbits, where it discusses the wandering years,
Mhm.
the years before they settled in the Shire. I mean, that's what we're seeing now. I thought it was, granted, it's always way more lighthearted when we're dealing with the Hobbit, so I don't have a problem with this. Now, the first thing I thought of when the men come by that they call giants,
Right.
and they're all popping out of their spots, was it reminded me of the Lost Boys and Steven Spielberg's Hook.
Oh, right.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
But so that was like the first vibe I got, but it's like I don't necessarily even have a problem with that. I initially thought, well, that's kind of odd,
Yeah.
but I think that if this is, it's the main reason that I think that this may be Gandalf.
Yeah. That's I didn't think it was him when I going into this, knowing what that was building
Mhm.
around it. After the first episode, I really didn't think it was him. even after the second episode, I was leaning more the other way, and now after watching it and letting it settle, it kind of makes sense that it would be him. Which, and at this point, like I said, it's if this can bring people that haven't read the books, don't plan on reading the books, and bring them into the world of Middle Earth and bring you into at least in touch with the world itself, is a great thing. It's a beautiful, and if it can get you to read the book, more power to you, because it's
Right.
so deep and rich with, if you're interested in the lore of this, it goes very deep.
Well, that's the thing.
So
There's so much to read. I mean, one of these, this whole shelf right here, from this edge all the way to where you see the Art of War, that's all Tolkien over to the Art of War. And that's not even like, I'm missing a number of books.
Right.
That I would love to have there.
I forget how many essays and letters.
That's the
even
thing,
the letters that he wrote to people were storylines. Were it's crazy how he took it, and it was like, I'm going to give this to the people, the Gaelics and the Welsh, and we lost our history, when the Saxons came and they burned everything. So I'm giving this to it, and then it became real, and never ending. And he added to it up until his death, and his son took over from there.
Yeah. Now, things I do want to see, like we see characters like Elrond and Gil-galad far more concerned with basically being politicians. They're the kings at this point, and there's no war, so there's no reason for them to be soldiers right now.
Mm-hmm.
But like up until the end of the Second Age, Gil-galad is potentially he's potentially the greatest king of the Noldor.
Right.
And we should at some point in this series see him lose his kingly vestments to go to war.
Yeah.
Like we should see him in armor. We should see Elrond in armor. So those are things I want to see. I don't want their role. And this is one of the concerns. This is one of the things people are concerned about, is that Galadriel is going to take on the storyline of Gil-galad and Elrond.
Yeah, it's that moniker, that guy Galadriel, that she's going to be the head of all of the wars, and that's all we'll see. And I really don't think that's where we're headed.
I don't think it is either.
She has to be a key piece in all of this, because it builds towards the power that she has later on. So I don't know. I'm really into it so far. And after the second watch, I was like, you know what? We can nitpick here and there over this, but story wise, it flows well. I think the verbiage and to bring you into the world of Tolkien itself was done well. The dialogue, the monologue, that it fits. Beautiful scenery, and they're doing a great job of world building here. So, you want to be a super purist? Yeah, there's plenty of things you can nitpick about and be upset about. But I think it's about everything where we got to find the joy in it.
Right. And there's so much stuff. Like if you were to make, if Peter Jackson's movies came out today, people would pitch an ever-loving fit about Arwen.
Yeah. There were a lot of complaints in the beginning about, they took this and it didn't happen that way. And
they left out Glorfindel, which is one of the most powerful of all the elves, is the one that shows up in the book and saves Frodo. Doesn't just show up to save Frodo. He shows up basically single-handedly, fights off the ring wraiths, and then saves Frodo. And they just took him out because they didn't want Arwen to basically only have her scenes. They wanted you to connect to the character more than just being the love interest of Aragorn. So I understand why they did it, but my point is that you could nitpick. If you want to nitpick, you could nitpick Peter Jackson's movies to death.
Oh, absolutely.
When they first came out, a lot of people did.
Yep.
And so I want to see something that stays true to the spirit of Tolkien. And I want to see something that that spreads that message of hope and friendship, and is a purely, I want to see a good versus evil fairy tale. That's what this is supposed to be. And I want to see something that makes a whole new generation of people fall in love with Professor Tolkien's work.
Yeah. And there's a good story following the elves. I mean, the story of the elves is how they realized that while as perfect as they felt they were, how all the other races had their place in the world. That and had they could amaze them. Hobbits could amaze anybody, and that whole feeling that we're all part of the same thing. And that coming together and that hope for coming together. I think is really at the spirit of it.
Yeah. I think we're in for a really fun ride. I mean, Ro, do you have any other thoughts on the series? Anything you really loved? Anything you were not sure about?
Well, it's really great to hear you guys talk about a lot of the intricacies of the lore and the story, because it does make me want to maybe revisit Lord of the Rings and maybe pay a little bit more attention, or go online and do a little research and things like that. We're only to 2 episodes in. I'm definitely going to probably go back and watch it from the beginning and absorb a little bit more information, especially after tonight, because I think I'll enjoy it more. I'm saddened that I'm not as deep into the lore as you guys, and now I feel how my wife feels when I talk to her about something Star Wars. She's like, "Huh? What? I don't know what you're talking about." So I empathize with her now. But yeah, it's definitely a show that I'm going to continue to watch, and I'm enjoying it.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Like I said, there are still some things that I think that they have to solve, like, and they have to solve them in a particular way. Like,
right.
Celeborn needs to show up. Like, you can't just decide to have Galadriel single through this whole thing. Like,
No.
because the fact that she marries is a big deal to the future of her story and Elrond's story.
Right.
So I do think that you're going to see that. But it's just a matter of when. Like, and everybody that's been the big question. Where is he? And of course the showrunners have said there's 5 seasons, just hold on.
Relax. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's funny how people will be really nitpicky when it comes to needing this happen, needing that to happen. How come this didn't happen this way and this didn't happen that way, but not given enough time to build the story to show why they might have left something out, or why they might have turned it a different way. And honestly, what a time to be a nerd right now, especially in a couple weeks. We've got House of the Dragon coming for the newer Tolkien style of fantasy. We've got Tolkien right now, and we're going to have Andor all running at the same time.
And while these are still on, at some point real soon, we should be finding out about Netflix's Chronicles of Narnia series.
Right.
Somebody's making an Aragon series.
Yes.
Like, just in the fantasy realm, like, just exclude all the sci-fi we're getting. Like, this is a golden age for fantasy. Like, maybe the first real golden age for fantasy television.
Truly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Love it.
Yep. All right. Well, anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up for the night and go watch episode 3, which should be dropping real soon.
Right. I'm really excited. I was really hesitant when I first started hearing about it. When I came on with you right before it came out, I had watched so much hate and listened to so much hate on this show. And then watched the first 2 episodes and was like, wow, I don't hate this. Why?
Right. Yeah.
I don't hate this. I can see some of the things where we're going, but I don't hate this. It's beautifully done. Let's see where they're going with it.
And I had to watch it twice. I watched it once. We had been on a con floor all day. We were tired.
Right.
We were also not in our house. We were in someone else's house. and I didn't have control of the TV, and so the volume was down lower than I would have wanted, and the closed captioning was all turned off. So there was times I was like, I'm not real sure what they even just said. It's beautiful, but I don't really know what's going on.
Right.
But my big takeaway is like you. It was like, because I'd been trying to follow this, keep up with both sides of how people were feeling about it, and I had seen so much hate.
Yeah.
Stuff that's just frankly just made up. Like they're just absolutely making up stuff about this show at this point.
Right.
To try to make it look bad. And it's like if you have legitimate reasons for not liking something, I fully respect that. But when you're just making up stuff because for some reason you have an agenda where this needs to fail, because it's really now, and you can tell because they start before they see the first image of a new show, that there's an agenda to stir up people against a show, and it's why Amazon, like the review bombing, these companies have got to do something about this. Where these, as soon as the reviews are available, it's just inundated with downvotes. Well, I'm sorry, there's no way, like, that half of those. Well, I mean, you had it downvoted thousands of times before it was even available to watch.
Yeah. This is like picking up The Lord of the Rings, which is 3 heavy books, getting through about the first 50 pages and say, I don't like this story. I don't like where it's going to go. I'm done with it. And you didn't even scratch the surface yet. I mean,
yeah.
Let it roll, man. Let it flow.
But that was my big takeaway. A lot like you, it was like I watched it and I was very nervous about it, and I was worried it was just going to be abysmal. And to some extent, I think I had let the hate kind of get in my head about it. And I watched it and I was like, I need to watch it again because I didn't catch everything. But like, I don't hate this. Like, I saw a lot of things I really liked. And and then I watched it again. The more I thought about it, listened to people talk about it at Dragon Con, and then watched it again when we got home. It's like, you know what? I really like, there are things I'm still going, you got to do this. You got to do this right at some point. Like, but just given the 2 episodes, I love it. I love this show so far.
Yeah, same here. And I think I'm the perfect example too of, when you go into a show and I guess the history, the backstory, whatever, you have certain expectations. Like if I go into a brand new Star Wars show, I know what I need to see for it to feel Star Wars. With this, I really didn't. I came in super blank, not knowing the lore, not knowing the characters. But again, just another example of, just chill, watch it. If you enjoy it, cool. But yeah, absolutely. I too saw a lot of hate and a lot of, on-screen presence of folks kind of dodging it and striking it down even before the first episode came out. And I don't know, it's just the wrong way to be I don't want to gatekeep and tell you how to be a fan, but I mean, if that's one way of not being a fan, then yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't have any problem with somebody not liking it. And if at some point I decide that I don't like it, I'm not going to tell the people that do like it that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I think it's gone so far beyond. There are hidden agendas at play. And this not just the YouTubers, the angry YouTubers. I mean, you saw this first with what we would consider legitimate movie critics, film critics, where they started letting agendas play a role in how they reviewed films and shows. And I honestly hope if you're listening to this, you should decide if you like things for yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, don't let anyone, whether it be a professional critic or a YouTube critic or anyone else, tell you what to like. And it doesn't have to be like, you can make all these arguments about, oh, it's objectively good or objectively bad. The difference in objective and subjective critique. And even though legitimate critique is a mixture of objective and subjective opinions. Don't let it doesn't matter if it's even considered objectively bad. If you enjoy it,
right, you enjoy it.
Yeah. There's plenty of things on my list that, well, especially Lunar Girl Kelly there will tell you, like, this is crap. No, it is not. It is a masterpiece. I love this.
I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I don't know about everybody, but I'll tell some people that I love this show. So, I mean, and those critics have bashed these shows that I like. And you know, it's you know, find what you like, and it's kind of finding yourself in it at the same time. And you know, don't be led astray by me saying it's great. Don't be led astray by somebody saying, you know, there's an agenda towards the patriarchy and all that other silliness too.
Absolutely. Go find out for yourself. Now, as far as that goes, I will say, if you've been hesitant to give this show a try because you've heard that it's bad or it's woke or it's full of modern politics, 2 episodes in, that stuff's not in there.
Okay.
Just go give it a shot and decide if you like it for yourself.
Definitely.
All right. Any thoughts before we finish up?
No.
Good stuff. Go watch the next episode.
So I did see your message. Ro, I just saw your message. I forgot I had a private tab.
I'm like looking at everyone in the chat, and it's just our friends.
Yeah, so I need to come up with something and do it when I have a few more people. Maybe something earlier in the day. So real quick before we wrap up, DB, tell us about your podcast, the podcast you're a part of, and what y'all have going on and coming up.
ATSW, the Escape Pod. We took basically the summer off. We all had a lot of things going on. Just a lot of stuff going on. Life getting away for a little while there, but we are coming back next week on Wednesday, 7:05. Don Delasnooch, Brady Big Lovin', and me, Dragon Buddy. We're gonna have a chill episode. We're gonna catch up, talk about what we were doing while we were gone, get some shenanigans rolling again, and I can't wait to come back and hang out with the guys for a couple hours and do our thing. So it'll be nice to have that back on Wednesday, September 14th.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Ro, what about you? What you got going on, and when are we doing another mega crossover?
As soon as you say the word, my friend, I will be there. But yeah, Shanti, Brad, and myself are having fun over here at the Citadel, the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. We're going to be talking about D23 that happens this week, later this week, the next couple of days, actually. We're going to watch all the coverage so you don't have to. So we're going to be on Saturday night live on Scarif Live on YouTube. So check it out. But we have a couple of shows in the works after tonight, but just over there having fun.
Awesome. Well, good deal. Well, we've got some stuff coming up. I should be sending out lists before the end of this weekend of our episode topics for our Muppet mayhem that we're going to be tackling. It looks now, including trivia, like it's going to be 6 Muppet episodes. 5 will be on the science fiction area, but we are going to do a crossover on to Coruscant Radio Underground and talk about the Jim Henson Creature Shop effect on Star Wars.
Right.
Very nice.
And so we've got all of that coming up, and then we'll be doing I've got the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy, the Cornetto trilogy trivia coming up real soon. I just need to get with everybody that was going to play in that and see when's a good time. But I'm about 90% done writing the trivia for that. So we'll be doing that real soon. And then we're going to tackle, probably to kind of close out the year, we will be doing, each person that's a part of the Science Fictionary podcast will be choosing a director that fits within our world of science fiction, fantasy, or adventure. And and basically doing kind of in following with our Mount Rushmore series. But instead of doing what we did on the previous Mount Rushmore series, each person is going to get a chance to choose a director and the 4 movies that they want everybody else on the show to watch, to discuss. And
Nice.
so we're going to be doing that first. And I've chosen Edgar Wright as my director that I want to cover. So we'll be kind of closing the year out with the Mount Rushmore of Edgar Wright movies.
Very nice. Very nice. Getting back real fast to your Muppets coverage, I have a great idea. If we can get, I don't know if you remember the opening of the Muppet Show when everybody was singing and dancing. Get everybody in the Red 5 network to do a segment and then put it together, and that'll be the opening for the show.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. I'll have to see who all can be.
Let's make it happen.
Talked into that.
Nice.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Science Fictionary podcast. You can find me running the Twitter account for this show at sci_fictionary. You can drop us a line at thesciencefictionary@gmail.com. And as always, you can find my podcast as well as the rest of the Red 5 Podcast Network at Red 5 Network on Twitter. And until next time, guys, may the Force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.